So we definitely have food, but first off, I wanted to introduce Chris. 1 month ago in the Salem Methodist Church in my hometown of Barrington, I got the opportunity to listen to Chris talk, and it was one of the most probably one of the most impactful nights that I've had for a while. What he said really touched me. He had a lot of insight to share about human trafficking as an issue in the Chicagoland area and what we could do exactly as students and kids to combat the issue. So let's give a huge round of applause for Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Yeah, we met about a month ago, and it was a cool night because it was a fundraiser for this church, and Nabil and some of his friends were there giving a presentation about what they did over the summer, going to the UN and the work that they're doing with Chess Without Borders. And I was really intrigued, and I love that because I love to see young people getting involved in using their gifts. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight by telling you what I do. My name's Chris. I'll give you a little bit of background on me. I'm a 46-year-old married father of 3. My kids are 18, 14, and 11. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles, and I know that this probably won't be hard for you to believe, but I'm a tattoo artist. I went through some pretty trying times as a kid. My dad left us when I was 14. I was in high school. At 16, I dropped out to take care of my family and worked hard my whole life. And wanted to prove to my dad that I could be successful, even through my circumstances. And I was. I worked for a company for 20 years. I met my wife, Lisa, my high school sweetheart. We started our family. And through that, we went through some pretty serious trials and tribulations. I was never a gang member. I always like to start by saying that. But all my friends were. I lived on a street called Centerview that ran north and south from Carson to Compton to Inglewood to Watts. You guys are probably too young to remember the Rodney King riots. You probably heard about them. That's where I lived. And I watched my city burn down. But as a kid, I was never dragged into the whole gang thing because they knew that that wasn't me. It's not what I was about. I was an artist. I've been an artist as long as I can remember. My parents weren't real big on us watching TV when I was a kid, so I started drawing, creating art. And I was a graffiti artist and an airbrush artist and did some commissioned work for some cool TV stuff as a kid at 16, 17 years old. But I watched 17 of my friends die as a kid. In fact, the last one of my best friends, his name's Dante. It's gonna be 10 years ago on Thursday. I think he passed away. He had just gotten out of jail, the LA Twin Towers jail. He was there for 2.5 years, paying time for things he did while he was a gang member. And when he came home, we did what we did for everybody when they got out of jail. We threw a party for him. And we had a great day. And Dante had told us how he wanted to change his life, and he wasn't going back to that old gang life. And he wanted to finish school and go on to college and make a career for himself and build a family. And we all kind of joked about it. And our wives and girlfriends had gone home. We were kind of hanging out, playing dominoes into the late night. And at 11:47 p.m., we were all out in front of his mom's house. And it was pretty dark out. A lot of the street lights had been shot out. But there was a Chevy Tahoe down at one end of the street. And it kept coming up, back cruising around the block. And it came up at one time at 11:47 p.m. and cut the headlights off. It came screaming up at the block when there were 6 of us standing outside of Dante's mom's house. Passenger side window rolled down, shotgun stuck out. They called out his name, they shot him. My friend was shot in the chest. He was dead before he ever hit the ground. And I was 5 feet away from him. I went home, I told my wife, Lisa, I said, I love you, I love our kids, I love LA, but I want our kids to have better than this. And you know, she'd been from Chicago, she was born and raised in Chicago until she started like junior high. And we talked about it, we said, where can we move? We want a fresh start, somewhere that has the same kind of cultural diversity as Los Angeles, same kind of music and arts and culture. because that's important to us and it's important to us when we're raising our kids as well. And we talked about it and we said, we've been to Chicago a number of times for stuff for your family, and weddings and stuff like that, vacations. He said, it's got all the things that we're looking for. It's a beautiful city. We don't have any gang problems at all. Let's move to Chicago. And we did. And we really thought that when we moved here. And when I say here, our family lives in Oswego, so we don't live in Chicago. Okay, so we're right down the street. I went through some pretty radical changes in my life about 8 years ago now. Very positive changes. And decided that at 37 years old, I wanted to live for something bigger than me. I was a tattoo artist on the side. I loved that. I never liked my job in logistics. I was miserable. I was a miserable person to be around. I was never happy. No matter how much money I made, I was never happy. And I decided that I was gonna basically ask God what he wanted me to do for the rest of my life, and I was gonna serve the community because I wanted to make a difference. And I started looking into that, like, what can I do? We look at the problems in the world today, and like, what can we do? There's so many problems. Surely I can't just make a difference. Well, I tell people all the time, you might think that, may not be true at all, but the impact of everybody using their gifts in the community to make a difference, doing one thing, makes a huge difference together. We're going to talk about that more as we go. So my one thing was, I'm going to go out and start covering and removing gang tattoos for free for people that are trying to change their lives. And what I thought was going to be a nice little thing, I did like 3 or 4 a month, blew up in a big positive way because the WGN News did a story on it. And I had a studio set up in the basement of my house. Let's think about this. Let's break this down for a minute. I'm doing gang tattoo removals for people I don't know that are telling me I'm leaving gang life. Please help me get rid of this tattoo. In my house, in my basement, when my kids are upstairs doing homework and my wife's cooking dinner. Probably not the brightest thing I've ever decided to do, or how to do it. But it blew up in a big way. One day I was given an update on the ministry at church when a friend of mine, his name is Agent Brian Smith, he's with the Department of Homeland Security. They're getting a lot of press right now. He's an amazing guy. He's a narcotics agent. And he came up to me after I had given the update and he said, Chris, I would love for you to come and meet with my gang unit, see if you guys can work together. And I was very excited because I was working with state and local authorities, police officers, judges, probation officers. But to get the chance to work with federal authorities when you look like me and they don't shackle you to a table and ask you questions for 12 hours is a pretty awesome experience. So I took him up on it, and as I was going up that day for the meeting, he called me and he said, hey, do you mind if my trafficking team sits in on this? They want to hear what you're doing. So what does drug trafficking have to do with removing tattoos? And he said, no, this is sex trafficking. And I remember exactly what I said. It's like, that doesn't even happen here. It happens in Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe and places over there. One of those over there problems. He said, it does happen over there, but it happens right here too. And we'll educate you, we'll bring you up to speed, give you an understanding of it. So I said, yeah, let's do it. Did the gang presentation, hit it off, we decided to partner up. And then I said one thing that changed my life and my family's lives forever. I said, can you please educate me about human trafficking and sex trafficking because I have no idea this is going on. He said, yeah, no problem. Sex trafficking and human trafficking is the second biggest growing crime in America after drug sales. And it's quickly approaching number 1. There's an estimated 300 to 400,000 American teenagers, this is just teenagers, being forcibly sold into prostitution in this country, in this state, and in this community every year. How many of you guys have heard about sex trafficking at all? Okay. It's encouraging to me to hear that because I speak at schools all over, junior highs, high schools, colleges, And then every time it's like more and more hands are raised, so it's good that people are learning about it. But people are like, well, I don't see it. You know, we have this kind of idea of what prostitution looks like. You know, Julia Roberts and Pretty Woman, what the movies tell us. You know, short skirts and high heels. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but that's not what sex trafficking looks like. I could bring 10 survivors of sex trafficking into this room and put them in chairs with you all, and you wouldn't be able to pick them out. They look just like Melissa. Now I share this picture because she's okayed it. She's an FBI witness now, and she's a paid advocate. She was picked up in Naperville. Anybody from Naperville here? All right, a few of you. I love Naperville, but nobody loves Naperville more than people that live in Naperville. And when I tell them that this is going on in their community, or any community, they get quite upset. Because this is, in my opinion, the sickest, most heinous crime that takes place in this country. And we're going to talk a lot about it. Who's heard of Backpage.com? Okay. Backpage.com is like Craigslist. Okay, you guys know about Craigslist? Okay. So you can go on, you can sell your car, your couch, whatever you want to sell on Craigslist. Backpage.com is under a federal subpoena right now. They're under investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice for engaging in sex trafficking. This is a screenshot that I took for this area. On Backpage.com, every single day, there are literally thousands of ads placed by human traffickers or pimps. Okay? When you click on these, it opens up. There's pictures, and there's more information and stuff I just won't tell you about because it's disgusting. I blacked out some of it because it was just too much to show, phone numbers and stuff. And the thing is, a lot of these ads, whether they're a minor or an adult, it doesn't matter because it's illegal. One thing I will say though, with Backpage.com especially, a percentage of these are federal agents posing as victims, trying to lure Johns in to be arrested. There was just a bust that took place in Aurora, at a hotel, 2 months ago. They arrested 18 men in 2 hours, trying to solicit sex from a 16-year-old girl, or who they thought was a 16-year-old girl. It was an Aurora PD officer and a federal agent that was posing. And 2 of those guys that they arrested lived in Oswego, where I live. One of them lives directly across the street from my church, and I met him. So this is something that's going on all across the country. Big cities, inner cities, suburbs, rural areas. I was just out in Macomb, Illinois, and they were talking about it out there in a town of like 3,000 people. So it's everywhere. It's going on. They gave me this high-level picture of what's going on with human trafficking in the United States. You know, they told me it goes on Backpage.com. It happens in strip clubs. Massage parlors are a huge issue, and even some on the streets and working in hotels. But I said, what do tattoos have to do with this? And I'll tell you, before I get into that, I've been a tattoo artist for 23 years. I love tattoos. I'm passionate about it. Not just creating artwork, but I'm very passionate about the history and the meanings and all that, things that go with tattoos. Sex trafficking tattoos, I'm going to show you some, are the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my life. Not because of the tattoo or the quality of the tattoo or what, but the fact that somebody forced a tattoo on them to mark them as property. You know, we hear branding. When we hear the word branding, we think like cattle or livestock. That's exactly what this is. Federal law enforcement calls this branding because they're forcibly tattooing the victims as marking them as property.